In this short video, I will discuss walk around birding and the settings I use and how. There are quite a few of us who indulge in walk around birding. In short, we walk around parks in general birding hotspots and try to get whatever shots we can. For a vast majority, this happens on weekends when most people are free. I'm just going to discuss this one technique that I have learned over the years during my walk around birding. This is about the settings I use on my camera and how. Most of us already know that we can find birds just sitting around or ones that just fly past us. We mostly miss out on the fly past ones. The shutter speed is generally the culprit in all these cases. Besides, of course, focus, which remains even otherwise. Now, this is a technique that I have shared with my colleagues and friends, and most of them have found this very useful in dealing with such scenarios for the most part. Generally, what happens is we would use slower shutter speeds for sitting birds and a lot higher for birds in flight or BIFs. I will not get into which camera mode you choose to shoot in or if you use full manual or auto ISO. The kind of metering mode you use will affect any auto settings that you have. That part is all yours. The only mode you cannot use this technique is the aperture priority since this is based on shutter speed. Personally, I use full manual excepting for autofocus and perhaps auto white balance, which I adjust in post anyway. And you can use the manual mode with auto ISO for similar results. I've spent a lot of time round tripping my shots from any new gear to figure out the response to light and distance and prefer to set the ISO manually instead of depending on the metering in the camera. Now, when you are at the spot where you want to start birding, take a test shot to make sure that you have the camera working as expected. You're not missing an SD card or a low battery. Then set the shutter speed to your favorite BIF speed. I generally use 1250, although I have started using 1600th on my Nikon D850 and I will explain why in another video. Now take a test shot again just to make sure that it is not too dark on the histogram. I would not advise looking at the camera LCD to figure out the exposure. The histogram is a better option. This is actually it. That's all we need to do. In short, always walk around with the camera set for BIFs, that is, birds in flight. In general, you will have enough time to reduce the shutter speed for still targets, but if any bird flies past, you might not have the time to bump up the shutter speed at that moment. Whenever you take a sitting bird shot, let us say with a shutter speed of around a 6/48th, lower, higher, whatever, make sure that you switch right back to your BIF shutter speed, a 12/50th or a 1600th. That way, you will not miss many. This process has two advantages. You will generally be able to get birds in flight that just pass by since your camera is already set for that. For smaller or tiny birds, you would need a higher shutter speed even for sitting shots because they are flittery. And even if you take those shots at a 12/50th or a 1600th or just one rotation of the dial to change the shutter speed, you will still get them. Assuming that you are working with a default camera settings of one-third stops, a single rotation of the dial will set the shutter speed to 1000th, which is good enough for most tiny birds. To summarize, Always keep your camera set to shoot BIFs. Change the shutter speed only when needed for sitting targets and switch back to BIF settings right after that shot. Last but not the least is that you should keep your shutter speed to what works best for your BIFs. The lowest reasonable speed for my gear and my experience so far is a 12/50th of a second. Feel free to go higher as and when needed. For example, small birds would require a 1600th, the tiny ones maybe even 2000th. Try out this technique and do drop in your experience and comments with the same. I do have some samples on my Flickr stream, and they have the entire EXIF for people who are interested in looking at those. The link is given in the description. That's it for now. Have fun till the next one.